Good afternoon, everyone. I believe everyone should be able to hear me loud and clear, hopefully. I know we're still waiting on some more to come on in. So while we're waiting on a few more, Wendy's going to queue up her presentation, which you'll be able to see on your screen. Excellent. Well, thank you and welcome and good morning, actually afternoon already, and welcome to the Construction Safety Association of Manitoba's 2023 Safety and Health Week virtual webinar series. So Safety and Health Week is a continent-wide event spanning the countries of Canada, USA, and Mexico, and the goal of the week is to focus the attention of employers, employees, partners, and the public on the importance of preventing injury and illness in the workplace, at home, and in the community. My name is Megan Story, and I am the Training and Development Manager here at the Construction Safety Association Manitoba, and we are proud to be recognized as your premier and trusted source for safety and health information, resources, training, and core certification. So today's Safety and Health Week virtual webinar is an example of how we are striving to provide you with practical and relevant information to help with accident prevention in your workplace. For those of you who know CSAM, quite simply, our answer is yes. How can we help? We will have the answers to your safety questions, or we will find an answer for you to help you with the resources and partners that we have in safety and health. Today, I am pleased to have and introduce to you Wendy Hofford, who will discuss the negative impact discrimination and harassment has in the workplace and on the bottom line, how to implement the spot, approach, and stop method for discrimination and harassment, and strategies and tactics to ensure that this method is successful in any workplace. Please note that we are recording this presentation, this webinar, and a copy of Wendy's presentation will also be made available following the completion of today's webinar. After all, now it's off to you, Wendy. Take it away.
Again, hi everybody, nice to see you all. Make sure if you haven't opened up your chat, do so. If anybody's been on any of my webinars before, I love interaction. So even though you are somewhere in your office or wherever you are, we still want your feedback. Here's the thing, when we look at about harassment, and Megan and I were working on figuring out how we were going to present this, and we kept just saying this thing is saying harassment is more than just a policy. And it just is. Human resources has been my background forever. Besides the fact of being a human resource professional, I'm also as a construction safety officer. So when we talk about prevention and safety, this is just such a perfect topic to talk about. Now, as we go through this, you could take notes and things, but we will give you the presentation as well. And I do have some handouts that we've actually put in, some resources available to you as well that we put into the chat. If you don't see them and you can't see in the chat, we'll make sure at the end that you get them as well. All right, so let's get into the topic we're here to talk about, which is, of course, harassment, learning how to spot, approach, and stop harassment in your workplace. So as we look at this, we're looking at the next thing we're going to be talking about is what discrimination and harassment have in common. It's a very blurred line and people sometimes get confused with that. So I want to make sure that we are covering that part of it. We're then going to look at the negative impact in the workplace and the bottom line. How to implement the SAS method. And when I say SAS, that's the spot, approach, and stop harassment. And then strategies and tactics to ensure that the SAS method is successful and you're able to bring it in. If you're not already using it in your workplace, you'll have something to start. So let's start with a question for all of you. So again, in your chat, but just tell me right now, if you know, does your organization have a harassment policy? In the chat, yes, no, don't know. We've got a lot of yeses. Oh, yes, is all the way across the board, right? Yeah. Well, here's why you do. It's because it's legislated. We have no option. And if you don't, you should, because you can get in trouble because it is legislated. So here in Manitoba, especially, this is one of the things is we are required to have a harassment policy. So from what you can see, if you're looking at chat and you're following it, Absolutely across the board. Everyone's got the right answer. Yep. I love that one, Kelly. Yep. Yeah. So yes, we do. Now the next question is this one. Does your organization have a separate discrimination policy? Maybe it's in with your harassment. Do you know? So yes, you have a policy, or yes, you know what's in with your harassment, or you don't know if discrimination is even covered in there. Veronica, you got separate. Okay. We've got yes, yes. It's in the policy. Thank you. Yes. Included. A lot of times it is included in the harassment policy, but here's the thing, if you don't know, then you need to know your policy. It starts there. In the policy. Nice. Here's the thing is, one of my pet peeves has always been, and anybody again that's been in any of my HR trainings that I do, is policies are great. And when they're legislated, we have no option. The problem is we do these policies, we use it as a checkbox and say, yeah, we got our policy. It's up on the board, safety board, which it has to be, but no one ever reads it. Oh, thank you. Yeah, see, yep, we do, but no one follows it. This is why we're having this training, because this is what happens. And policies, any of the policies, if we don't manage to them, they just become words on paper. Nothing more, dust collectors, nothing more than that. So this training, I want to make it so that we're able to take those words off that policy and bring it alive. How do you manage to it, right? So that we can have people following it, that we're leading and managing to it, and where it doesn't have to be all the end all to be all. It's in the policy. Well, there's more than that to it. Let's bring it alive. So let's start with the very first thing, which is really about the discrimination, which I asked you the question about if you had a policy for it, and harassment. Some companies, as you'll note from the chat, some have separate policies. Lots of companies just put them together. They really should be together, and we'll talk why, because they do have a lot in common. So here's the thing. Again, your chat told you to be interactive. Would you define harassment? Let's just start with harassment first. So we're talking about harassment. We use that word a lot around, right? You hear it in the news. Well, what is it? So I want to hear from all of you, your own definition. How would you define harassment? So you're probably quickly Googling it. If you were talking to a 3-year-old, how would you tell them what harassment is? Picked on. Thanks, Doris. Being bullied, unfair, unkind treatment, repeated mistreatment by an individual, group of individuals. Thank you, Tricia, on that one. Name calling. Look at, there's a lot of things, no respect, bullying, injustices. When you start thinking about harassment, it's all the above and more, right? Inexcusable misconduct. Very good on that one. Yeah, that's true. And so we see it, and wait till you see some of the stats I'm going to share with you. It's pretty serious stuff. Continual disrespect. A lot of different things in there, isn't there, when we look at harassment. Here's one of the official definitions of it. Is any unwanted physical or verbal behavior that offends or humiliates a person. Pretty simple, isn't it? All the things that you said is any unwanted physical or verbal behavior that offends or humiliates a person. And here's the thing, a lot of people think it has to be continual. It doesn't. It can be a one-time event. So knowing that harassment can be one time or continual, and it can escalate, is a concern. All right, so now I've asked you the question about harassment. Let's go to the next one, which is the discrimination. Now, what's discrimination then? What do you think? How would you, again, talking to a 3-year-old, and they asked you, what is discrimination? What would you say? How would you explain it? Segregation and aggressive disagreements, being made to feel different. Very good. Oh yeah, picked on because different. Prejudice. Yeah, it is those things. Is it based on the differences? And differences is the key word on that one for sure. Yeah. Poor treatment on protected ground. Thank you, Annie, on that one. Yeah. Amy, sorry about that. I called you Annie. Amy. Yeah, treated from others. Yeah, cultural group differences. Look at, yeah, and you are going right down the right path on this one. So the definition is an action or a decision that treats a person or group badly for reasons such as race, age, or disability. Anything that's under the discrimination under the Canadian Human Rights Act is really what they would consider. But anything that's treating a person based on something such as the race, age, disability, those are just some examples. You've all hit the nail on the head. It's just really picking on somebody because they're different in their eyes. Right. So now we've got two definitions. We've talked about harassment. We've talked about discrimination. Let's look at them together. So here they are side by side. Interesting is if you look at harassment and you look at the definition, it talks about behavior, doesn't it? And yet then when you look at discrimination, it talks about an action or a decision, hence a behavior. These are the things that's come into our workplace that work against somebody else. And so there is the commonality starting just in the definition alone. So I've got some true and false for you. So let's take a look at this first one. When someone makes unwelcome remarks or jokes about your race, sex, age, or disability, this behavior falls under harassment. True or false? True. True. I went easy on you on that one. For sure, it's true. Here's the thing. Is harassment occurs when someone makes unwelcome remarks or jokes about your race, religion, sex, age, disability, which are the grounds of discrimination. Okay, so that does fall under there. And you could see, again, two words in the exact same explanation. Let's try this one. A colleague repeatedly makes fun of your accent and heritage. This is considered discrimination, not harassment. What do you think? False. Got a couple different answers. False, but it is both. I think you know I gave you on that one, Lydia. False. We've got a lot of falses. And you're correct on that one. And the reason being is it is both. And you're right, Lydia, on that one. When someone makes fun of someone's, it is harassment, but it's the same thing. It's on the grounds of discrimination. All right, we've got another one for you. Workplace harassment impacts more than 80% of employees in Canada. What do you think? True or false? 80%, that's a lot. Got a lot of truths. Hope it's not true. False, but probably close. Kelly's got a false. We've got some truths. We've got a lot of truths and a lot of falses. So we're on the fence on this one, aren't we? Is she tricking us or what are we doing here? Well, okay. I have some good news and I have some bad news. And the good news is it is false. For those of you who said you're false, you are correct. But the bad news is, although it's not 80%, it's pretty damn bad. Workplace harassment here in Canada impacts over 70% of employees in Canada. 70%. That means the majority of you that are on this call, 70% of the people on this call have been impacted by workplace harassment. That is not okay. This information that I gained actually is pretty relevant and not too old in the fact that it was researchers from the University of Western, the University of Toronto, and the Canadian Labour Congress surveyed all types. So every industry, not just construction, or it's all industries from October 2020 to April 2021. And these are some of the findings I want to share with you today on that. But it's not okay. And it's certainly at 70%, we're not getting better. And they're anticipating if workplaces don't step in and start taking the words out of the policy and actually living it, this is going to climb. It's going to climb. That's scary stuff. Yes, thank you, Ross, on that one. Yes, remember your harassment policy must meet the Workplace Safety and Health Act and Regulation. That's correct. And so we're going to look at the negative impact because we can know all of these things. We know that's legislated. We know we have to have it. It's a ticky box. There's more than that. The negative impact of the workplace and the bottom line are crazy. So I want to ask you first. I want to get your insight. What could be the negative impact to the workplace and the bottom line now that we know it's 70%? So what do you think could be some of the impact to your company if we allow it to continue? Absolutely, Kelly. Productivity, I can totally agree with that one. Absolutely. Absenteeism, turnover, cost of constantly training new workers, loss of production, employee performance. All of this costs money. It costs impact, mental health. It costs our benefits. It costs the bottom line. And unfortunately, A lot of companies, a lot of leaders don't think of it that way. They think of it as a pain in the butt right then, or they think, oh, we'll just ignore it, maybe it'll go away. But it's really impacting, thank you, Shelby, the revenue coming in and going out. It just is. So look at this here. So based on the studies that I've been following, 88% of workers who experienced harassment were transferred, suspended, fired, or lost a shift due to their harassment. Now take a look at this again. We're looking at 88% of workers who experience harassment. This is not the people that are the harassers. We're talking about the people that have been harassed. They're the ones that get transferred, suspended, fired, lost a shift because of harassment. That's not okay, is it? Because 10 to 1, a lot of these people that we move out of the way because they are the squeaky wheel or the whiners, you call it what you want, or we just don't want to deal with it, suspend, fight, whatever's going on in our culture. The fact is these are good people that are no longer productive, nor can they be productive, and it's causing a hit to the bottom line. That's alarming. 70% of workers who experience harassment had to miss work because of the negative attitudes. And we talked about that. And I can't remember who it was that had said about absenteeism. Thank you, Lydia said absenteeism. This is it. Or we have even presenteeism. What we mean is you're at work, but you can't concentrate because you're so stressed because of the harassment that's going on. You can't even think straight because somebody's harassing you. Right? Or you're doubting yourself. We'll talk about all that, but 70%, that's huge. Again, hitting the bottom line, isn't it? 1 in 4 said that reporting made the situation worse. Now, I know you've already indicated that every one of your companies that's been on this call or that are on this call right now or on this webinar, that you do have a policy and you probably have a complaint procedure. But then why is it that 1 in 4 say that reporting is making the situation worse? And for some, it's because we don't train our leaders on how to handle it when it comes across. A lot is we're so busy, we don't want to have to deal with it. So unfortunately, people don't want to come forward, or we lose good people because they come forward and the end result is not good. And so they leave, which is unfortunate. Third parties, such as customers, clients, and patients, and co-workers are the most commonly reported perpetrators. When I look at that, that means we're allowing our customers to mistreat our people, the clients beat our people up, or patients beating our people up in the fact of just the way they're treating them, and we allow this stuff to continue and are letting our co-workers mistreat each other. That's really not good. Our job as employers is to protect our people. That's our number one thing, is to keep our people safe. And we say, well, we have this policy, but if we're not living this policy and it's only words on paper, we're not protecting our people. And so this here has to stop. So there's where we're going to go. So that's my introduction into this part of it. And then be able to say, okay, so now Wendy, you saying all these stats and we know this stuff, but then how do we implement the SAS method, which is the spot approach and stop. So as we go into each of them, I'm going to start with the first one, which is spot. So when we talk about harassment, it does come in many forms, and we saw that in the chat. So our job right now, and what I'm doing here, is to shed some light on what some of the harassment can look like. So we've got verbal harassment, psychological harassment. These are all the top ones: digital, physical, and sexual. We hear a lot about the sexual, but there's a lot of other ones as well. It hits the news, but the same thing is all of these things should hit the news. All right. So let's look at each of these individually. So harassment. I'm going to ask all of you. Before I give you my answers, when I say verbal harassment, what comes to mind? Throw that in the chat. What comes to mind for verbal harassment? Put downs, name calling, yelling, name calling, bad language. Thank you, Doris, on that. Yeah. Somebody talking bad to you or about you, sorry. Yeah. inappropriate jokes, gossip. Gossip is a big one, yeah. Name calling, talking about or gossiping. Yeah, and a lot of it is these demeaning remarks, isn't it? Anything that's negative said about someone else then can become verbal harassment. Offensive comments, like the name calling, malicious criticism. In other words, you're criticizing and it's for ill intent. Insults, slurs, hurtful jokes and comments we've talked about. And yet we see it, we hear it, right? And so some people, I'm just joking. That's always that passive aggressive, right? Doesn't make it okay, does it? So that's a verbal harassment. Now we talk about psychological. Again, I'm going to ask you, when I say psychological harassment, what do you think that might mean? We talk about psychological health and safety. So what do you think about this one? Intimidation, threats. Good one on that one, Maggie. Yeah. Mind games, Doris. Thank you. Passive. Yes. That passive aggressiveness, constantly being talked down. Yes. You know, it can be as simple as this one, withholding information. Withholding information just to set somebody so it makes somebody else fail. Or just so that they don't have all the information, right? Gaslighting. In other words, making somebody think that they're going crazy. Or giving them creating a feeling of uselessness, imposing impossible demands and deadlines, projection of blame, always blaming them. The person starts questioning themselves, persistently opposing everything they suggest and everything they want to do, always pointing at them. You know, it's slowly chipping away at their self-esteem, isn't it? Isolation, exclusion. All of these things are the mind games. Actually, Doris said mind games, and that's right. These are all mind games that we're messing around. And Kelly, you're right. It's passive, isn't it? It's by just chipping away at somebody and then ignoring them, even though they're there, making them feel like they're nothing. These are the mind games that happen. So we've got verbal, we've got psychological. Here's a new one, the digital. So think about digital. What comes to mind for harassment when we think about digital harassment? What do you think that might be? Slander. Ooh, slander online. All the above, for sure. Facebook negative comment, sexting, never ending. That's true. And that's one of the things they're finding out, that this is that silent harassment in the background, that some people, yeah, the pictures, it is nasty. And the reason that this one is nasty is because people feel it's okay to make social media comments and posts. Making this one just blew my mind, making fake persona. Who has the time? Web page for somebody else. That's not okay. False allegations online. That was the slandering that came up. Inappropriate emails, persistent berating, that never ending. Thank you, and Kelly, on that. Berating emails and texts. So I want to go back to this one really quick, and the fact of this, what they've anticipated, this is going to get worse too. We have to be able to hammer it down in our organizations that that's not okay. Those emails that we're just throwing back and forth to people, and the social media and the text that we're sending, it's so easy for us because we're not in front of the person, right? It's faceless. And for that reason, people think it's okay, but it's not. And so, and the other thing is, you have to remember that these are legal documents that can be used against somebody. So this is a good way to remind them, whatever they do, whether it's texting, whatever it is they're doing, as soon as it's there, it's out there and it's not going away. It's there to stay. It can be found. All right, so let's go into physical harassment. I think we've talked a lot about before, and people, it's easy to say, well, you know what, somebody's touching me, or assault, shoves, blocks, kicks, hitting, those physical things. Maybe it's threats of violence, damage to personal property, intrusion to personal space, stalking, spying, pestering, coercion, aggressively forcing to say or do something against their will. These things, and sometimes it's funny and not funny, but it's I've seen it a lot, and I think back over my career where this is damage to personal property or intrusion of personal space even. People thinking it's funny to take people's things off their desk or break things just because it's funny. It's not funny, and it actually falls under physical harassment. And it also could fit under psychological harassment, correct? Yes. All of those sort of things can make a big difference. All right, and then one more, the sexual harassment. This can be unwanted sexual advances, inappropriate touching, sexual jokes, sharing pornography, sending sexual texts or emails, requiring sexual favors in exchange for advancement. So that's a whole gambit, isn't it, of a lot of things that we can spot. So I have a question for all of you. Which one or more have you experienced either or been witness to? A, B, C, D, E. Could be all of them or a little bit. Throw into the chat what comes to mind. Oh, wow. All of them. That's scary. Most of A. I see a lot. Yeah. Unfortunately, isn't that something when you think about it? What I've learned from being in HR for a long time, and it's still to this day, working with organizations when we're dealing with situations like this, what I've learned for sure is harassment takes a piece of the person. I've seen way too many times where people have had to go on stress leave because the harassment's so bad and the company just didn't approach it properly. And it was not handled right. And now this person is broken. This person will never be who they were before. Literally had this conversation yesterday with a client, with one of their employees that has to go on stress leave. They are so, because the harassment has been going on for so long and it never was addressed. That's not okay. And so we want to make sure that we know how to approach this situation. There's two sides that I want to talk about when we talk about approaching a situation. Number one is, what do you do when you're witness to the harassment? Or somebody maybe's come to you after and said, you know what, I feel like I'm getting harassed, or I feel like I'm going crazy. And now all of a sudden you're aware of it. Or the other one is you are personally being harassed. So we're going to look at each of these ones. So let's look at the first one, which is the witness to harassment. First thing you've got to do, if you are witness, you're not the one being harassed, but you either are seeing it going on, or maybe somebody's even coming to you more. So let's just talk about it for now. Keep it simple. Is you're seeing it going on. First thing is you better assess the assessment. In other words, is it safe to intervene? Is the person in danger? Will your intervening make it better or worse? So just a quick assessment of, should I step in? Should I not? How should I handle this? Just kind of think about it a little bit. Or is there someone better equipped to handle the situation, right? Do you get a manager? Do you get HR? What do you do? It's going to depend on the level, the severity of what's going on, who this is, what's going on. But to stand by and let it continue is not okay either, because you're the part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Right? It's not easy for everyone, but still, this is the time where you want to assess, first of all. Now, let's say you're going to approach it. How do you do it? Well, you could address the person doing the harassment. For me, I'm a person that doesn't have too much problems on that. I can do that and go ahead. But Maggie, thank you. Yeah, you can get some good training on it, which is great. Thank you for sharing that. You can be firm if that's an easy thing for you to do. Let them know that the behavior is not appropriate. It's not okay. We're better than that here, wherever it is we work. But you may not be that comfortable doing it yourself. If you're not, but somebody's got to step in, then get help. Get help. Or you can do it this way as well, is just distract for the time being, just to get that person into safety and get them away from it. You can run interference. Create a distraction. That doesn't mean to start the place on fire, but the fact is you want to diffuse the situation so that they can no longer target that person. You're interjecting, running interference to diffuse the situation, deflect what's going on. So instead of approaching the harasser, you could just say, hey, Wendy, Do you want to just kind of, I need you over here, need some help, just to get them out of the situation, right? Or you know what? Oh, I just talked to your boss, your supervisor needs to talk to you. They don't, but it's just to get them away. So that can help just to diffuse the situation, and then you can follow up with them later. Change the topic, but the whole thing is take them out of the situation. Okay, so we've gone through the distract piece. Now let's talk about getting help. I have a question for you. Know what resources are offered through your company. Maggie, you talked about some training, which is great. That's NVCI training. It gives good tools. I love that. But what other things? So what kind of things might some of you in your organization, what kind of resources is offered through your organization to help people that are being harassed, or how to handle it? Does anybody offer training? Safe Work Manitoba? If you don't know, it's a good thing to ask. There should be some resources there. If we have a policy on it, then we need to have resources to help our people, don't we? So where do we go for help? So the question is right now, who would you go to? Where would you go? Nonviolent crisis intervention, de-escalation strategies. Yes. And there's lots of good information out there, good training for de-escalation strategies. Love that. If you have HR, that's great. Union, thank you, Trish, on that one. Yes, because human resources, that's a good one. Supervisor, you know, hopefully your leadership is trained in how to de-escalate, how to handle these sort of things. And if they're not, that's a place to start as well. Ethics committee, safety, yes. Here's the thing, you know, and the fact is, you can call. Ross had mentioned about workplace safety and health. Well, this is what they oversee, right? You can call them and ask them for guidance in there, or Safe Work Manitoba. There's a lot of resources in there, which we'll share some of that stuff at the end of the training. But you can call the Canadian Human Rights, the Manitoba Human Rights, or the Canadian Human Rights. Here's the Manitoba number right here on the screen. But to make sure that you have resources available, that if you have human resources, not every company has human resources, but if you do, hopefully they're equipped enough. I've heard of many places where human resources doesn't step in. That's unfortunate, because I see it as an obligation. All of us in management or in a support function, we should be there for our people. So if that's not happening, then we want to guide our people, or be able to give these kind of numbers and these resources to help our people and be supportive. Take the person being harassed aside to talk to them, make sure they're okay, right? Acknowledge what happened. Don't sugarcoat. Oh, it's okay, that's just them. I've heard that many a time. Oh, that's just them, that's just the way they are. They're like that to everyone. The moment we start saying that, we're saying that's okay for their behavior because it's them. That doesn't make it okay. It doesn't matter who it is. So you want to show empathy and compassion. You're human, human to human. It's not okay. Ask them if they're okay and if they need additional support or help. And if they say I'm fine, that's a red flag, right? So fine is not necessary. That is the blanket. Studies show that we say fine when we're not. So if they say fine, this is just a little side note, is on a scale 1 to 5, 1 being you wish you weren't in this situation right now, to 5 being I'm doing great right now. What's your number? If they give you a 2 or a 3, that's a concern. Then you're able to say 2, all right. So not clearly you're not fine. Let's talk about it. So studies show that when you get asked a number, people are more inclined to give you a number, and it's more safety. It's safe for them. So there's a little tidbit trick, best practice. It works. And then definitely, you know, I'm HR, so I'm going to tell you to document. Safety is going to tell you to document. You need to document. Record the details of the incident. Include the date, the time, location, who's involved. Are there any witnesses? You just write it down. You may never need it, but you want it if you need it. The more detail, the better. So documentation is huge. You want to make sure that you have that because you might need it. And then following up with the person who was harassed, make sure maybe a day or 2 later, make sure they're doing okay. Let them know that you documented the incident in case they need it, because you just might need it down the road. All right, so that's that part. Let's go into the next part, which is when we look at these are the 7 that I've already gone through. Let's go to the next part, which is the personally harassed. first of all, and we'll always say this, if somebody comes to me and says they're feeling harassed, I'll always say, did you tell them to stop? Have you handled it yourself? That's generally in the policy that way. But at the same point, you need to know, do they know that that's not okay? And then you can have that conversation outside of that. So telling them to stop is certainly one. Make it clear that this behavior is unwelcome and not appreciated. Tell her to stop the behavior immediately, hopefully in writing or both. And this is something, you know, that sometimes it's okay to follow up with an email and just you have documentation. If you're not comfortable with that, but at least make sure that you're saying it verbally and in front of a witness is probably a good idea. And then talk to someone who can support you. Now, some of you may not be very comfortable talking to the harasser, but then find somebody who can be your advocate, who can speak up for you. Document, we go back to that same thing, recording it, time, dates, all the same things I've just gone through. And try to remember to notate the exact words used is a good idea if it is verbal. Be clear as you can. And this is the piece, I always say sign and date the document. I would even say that if you're witness, sign and date is always a good thing to have. Again, you're going to have these notes. So I'm going through it fast because we only have this hour and we've got 25 minutes. I want to make sure we cover what we want. Tell someone who can address the behavior. So if you're feeling that you're being personally harassed, then harassed, then you want to make sure that you bring that incident to supervisor, manager, human resources. Oh, I love that, Ross. Good idea. Use your phone and record the abuse. Smart. That's good. Yeah. Anything that you can do to protect yourself like that and to record it, smart. If you're unionized, tell your union representative and file a grievance. That came up earlier in the chat. And then again, here we go, right? You're going to call. If you're not getting the help you need, well, you may have to call. You can call confidentially and just let them know this is what's going on. They don't even know your company, but what are some steps you can take? They will help you. That's their job. Same with human rights. So that is their job to be able to help you, and they will. And they've got a lot of resources. So even offering this sort of thing, especially if you're a smaller organization, there's nothing wrong with that. But just having the policy isn't good enough. You need to be able to help yourself and each other going through something like this. Okay, so we've gone through all the different things. We've talked about the two sides on how to approach. The next one is this one. We want to be able to stop it. And then as I've got in the picture, this guy holding it up, but how do we stop workplace harassment? By taking preventative measures so that we're able to continue moving forward and stopping the harassment. So how do we stop it? Well, many of you have harassment. You could develop an appropriate anti-harassment. That's what they're using now, more than a harassment. The difference between an anti-harassment policy and harassment is anti-harassment is prevention. So again, yours might be drafted a lot way like that. All you got to do is use the anti in the front. So be able to have an appropriate policy that's really addressing it. Establishing and maintaining an impartial and clear complaint process. A lot of times it's very convoluted. Make sure it makes sense and your employees understand it. Make sure your managers know how to lead through it, to guide their people and support them through it. Provide comprehensive training for all levels of the organization. And I'm big on that. Make sure that people are trained. And we've had some people throwing in the chat some great ideas on how they're doing it and where you can get some training. Take advantage of the training that's out there. And then make it easy for your employees to get support, be heard, and bring their concerns forward. Sometimes we don't make it that easy, and that can be a concern. And Tricia, you could sum it up real good with that one. And she's got lead by example, for sure. That it starts with us and how we treat each other. That's for sure. It does start with that. And especially if you're in a senior leadership position, it always starts at the top. So we've gone through the SAS method. We're starting to get down to the last 20 minutes. I want to make sure we have some room for questions. So we're going to go into the final piece, which is a handout, which is, we'll make sure you get it. But I want to go through strategies and tactics to ensure the SAS method. So that's that spot, approach, and stop method is successful. So I'm going to go through each of these steps. We're going to start with the very first one. Create and communicate your anti-harassment policy. So you want to review and update your, now, whether you have anti-harassment, harassment, whatever policy you've got in regards to harassment, you want to review and update your policy to ensure it remains current. A lot of times it doesn't. Heck, I've been in organizations where they haven't even looked at it since 1990. You best be looking at it, right? Make sure it's relevant, and it's relevant to your business, to your people. And then every leader, right from CEO all the way down, needs to be accountable and be able to hold their employees accountable to the policy. If we're not, and we're not following that policy, you know what? That policy is no good, and it will not be held up in court, because we are not saying that we're not walking the talk. We're not leading by example. Not just leaders, all staff. That's exactly right. That's it, right? Ross, is all employees need to be held accountable. The leaders, it starts with you set the tone of the culture. If it's okay and you think just because you're senior leadership, you can treat people that way, that's not okay. But it's also not okay to let others do it all the way along. So thank you on that one, Ross. Is everyone's accountable. Make sure that you establish an effective complaint procedure. Make sure that it's clear. First thing, for second step, whatever it is that you need, make sure that it's very clear so that people know what to do, and train your people in it. Now, this one, in my opinion, is more important than ever, and it doesn't get done a lot, which is create a communication plan to consistently remind employees of the policy and complaint procedure. Senior leaders, first of all, senior leaders must be part of the strategy. It has to, I said, it has to support the policy, and that the harassment will not be tolerated. Make sure that you include that retaliation is prohibited and will not be tolerated. And then mandate all employees are to be trained to ensure solid understanding of the behaviors that are considered harassment and the consequences. It needs to be part of it, and it should be part of the new hire orientation. And communication, the communication should be consistent and constant in regards to reminding people through town halls, all staff meetings, newsletters, whatever it is, to make sure that people understand. And a few reminders throughout the year is not a bad thing. Toolbox talks, make sure people are knowing and reminding them, because all incidents should be reported as soon as possible. And a good rule of thumb is to treat them like a court case, because God forbid it could end up being one if you don't take care of it. So take it serious from the get-go, because you don't want to have to all of a sudden it become a court case. This is like in the safety, we talk about any safety thing, is immediately investigate all claims that occur. Investigate it and make sure that we're addressing it immediately is the key on that one. No matter how big, it may not be important to you, but if somebody's got enough nerve to come forward and be able to say that, then we owe it to them to look into it and get to the bottom of it. Be careful not to take any action that can negatively impact the person who's making the complaint. In other words, don't transfer them to a different location just to separate them. Sometimes that can be very detrimental. We want to make sure that we're really thinking it through and doing what's best for the business, best for the person, best for everyone involved. So don't just take quick action. Make sure you're really looking at it and doing the right thing to protect everyone involved. And then this is the biggest one, probably out of all of them, is take whatever measures necessary to stop the harassment immediately. It's not okay. Well, we'll leave it till Friday. It's not okay. You need to stop it. As soon as you are aware of it, it needs to stop immediately. There's no wait for a week. It doesn't work that way. And then ensure the job benefits are not lost to the harassment for the person being harassed. In other words, what I'm saying there is, you know how I've given you in the statistics in regards to people being transferred, suspended. Make sure that if they're being harassed and they're the victim in this situation, that everything continues for them. They should not be penalized because they're on the other end of being harassed. That's not okay. And ensure the person who committed the harassment is held accountable through disciplinary actions in line with your anti-harassment policy or your harassment policy. If disciplinary action of the harassment is not considered appropriate, make sure you document the reasons why. And number 10 is ensure through documentation of the investigation and the steps taken to address and resolve the situation at the end. Make sure that you have thorough documentation. It's so important. So those are the best practices to be able to use to make sure that we're implementing a procedure that ends up and a part of our culture that we're addressing it, and we're saying it's not okay. We do not want to be in those statistics. We want to make sure that us as employers and us as leaders and people, co-workers, we're treating everybody with dignity and respect. So what we're going to be giving you at the end is we have the slides. You'll have copies of these slides, but along with the copies of these slides, we're also going to include the Canadian Human Rights Commission checklist for anti-harassment policy. This is what it looks like. It's a PDF. It says small organizations, but when I read through it, I mean, it can be used for any size of organization. So it's a good resource to use, and it's a great checklist to go through and see. And Megan, you've added it back in there. Thank you. It's in the chat, so you can download it from there. And Safe Work Manitoba has an amazing booklet. If you've not gone through it, I really highly recommend it. It's available online, but we also have it as well. And again, it's right now in the chat as well. So download it as well. It's a really good resource on how to prevent harassment in the workplace. So I have a question for you as we wrap up, and then I want you to ask me questions if you have any. If I don't have the answers, we got a lot of smart people on this webinar, and we'll certainly use all our brains together to find you an answer. But my question is, do you have a wellness committee, or do you bring anything regarding harassment under your safety committee? What do you do right now in regards to handling harassment issues and talking about your workplace culture and turning your culture around? Do you have a safety committee? Do you do a wellness committee? Safety committee, Ross, thank you. If it's not a topic that's talked a lot about, today's the day you can make sure it's at the top of mind. How often do you discuss harassment as a company? Okay, culture you talk about in the community wellness committee, nice. Safety committee, weekly, nice job on that one. The topic never comes up. Okay, so you got some work to do on that one. Team building and toolbox safety meetings as well. Never. Okay. During my toolbox twice a month. Nice, Grace. That's good. Yeah, actually, it should be more than twice a year, or more than ever, for sure. We need to do a better job in organizations across the board in every industry of talking about harassment more. And it's not like drumming it down to people, but just talking about treating each other with respect. Why it's important that we bring in anti-harassment policies. Why discrimination is not okay. Just making it a little bit more inclusive to make sure that people know that they belong, that they feel that they belong. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. I deliberately ended it a little bit. We've got 10 minutes left, but I wanted to open up because this is a hot topic. And so if anybody has any questions, I'd love for you to throw it in, or share some best practices. This is the time. So I want everybody to take your eyes off my screen and take a look at the chat. And let's see what we've got. Maggie, you got as part of your orientation, and thus far, we've been very fortunate with good foremen and project managers and staff that work well together. Kudos to your company that you are actually got it in the orientation. You know, it's been alarming me working with different organizations where a lot of them don't have this conversation in the orientation. It starts there for a new employee so that they understand what our complaint procedure looks like, that they understand that we as an organization are not going to stand by and let them be harassed. So if you don't have as part of your orientation, that is a really good best practice. So thank you, Maggie, on that one. And also, you actually mentioned something too about good foremen and project managers and staff that works well. That's not by accident. That is culture. And so making sure that we address and extinguish that behavior right off the hop is really important to make sure that we're training our foremen, our supervisors, our project managers, any of our leadership, how to address this stuff. A lot of times they don't address it because they don't know how. Well, let's educate them. Let's get them these tools. Let's make it something. We've got Wendy. Is there an organization that an employer can deal with if they're dealing with harassment from an ex-employer besides getting police and lawyers involved? At that point, yeah, you could reach out to Safe Work, or I'm sorry, Workplace Safety and Health, or you could reach out to even the Human Rights will certainly work with you to help you figure that out as far as what to do. There's some independent companies that you can reach out to. I don't want to, there's a lot of different ones out there. I've got some on my mind. If you want to reach out to me personally, I certainly would be happy to lead you that way. You can find me at wendyhofford.com, and I can certainly help you that way. But I would even just reach out and, find out how to deal with it this way. Yeah, because if you can do it without getting lawyers involved, that is a great way to do it. But to stand by and just let it go away, no, because what's causing the one person is probably happening to somebody else, and it's continuing to happen. Are there privacy laws that would be an issue if non-declared recordings are employed to catch bad actors? I would not have a problem. It could be. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really speak to that. What I would do in regards to that is letting them know that they are being recorded. I don't have a problem with that. If that's all they need to know is that this behavior continues, I will record this and let them know it. And if they don't like it, one or two things is going to happen. I will turn it on at that point because now I've told them, so it is declared. And the other thing is they'll probably stop it. So that at that point that's all I care about. Let's just stop the behavior, right? So they'll know that where you stand on that. So, you were saying ex-employee. Okay, an ex-employee. So now let me go back. Is there an organization that an employer can deal with dealing with harassment from an ex-employee? Oh, okay. Well, at that point, an ex-employee, I guess I'd have to know more of the details on what's going on there to help guide you that way. I mean, again, you could reach out and we could take a look at the details of it to see what's going on and to the level of what it is. There is sometimes where you just hire a lawyer and they can do a cease and desist letter that goes from the lawyer rather than having to step in. They'll just write the letter and you can send it that way if it's continuing. So that's always a good way to do it. Is there any way this presentation can be shared with all of our workers? That would be up to CSAM in this regard. I don't have a problem sharing it, but again, it'd be up to CSAM on that one. Megan, I'll leave that in your hands on that one. Maggie's asking that one. How would you bring this up to maybe a grouping of people who may not see this as top priority? Not that we have issues as much. I hear you this one, Lisa, on this one. Yeah, okay. I've had this conversation. Remember when I said in the slide about the bottom line? That's how you got to get to that. Sometimes it's not top priority until it hits the bottom line, right? And so be able to talk to senior leadership about why it's important, about productivity, about absenteeism, about how you can't keep good people. That's where they wake up, because if you can measure it in the numbers piece to it, that validates your business case. So in that case, that's what I'd be saying there, is to be able to speak to it in their language. That's how I brought it up before, because otherwise they don't, until it's too late, and that's too late. So what's in it for them is bottom line. It's generally going to, but again, it depends on the group of people that's not seeing it. But I kind of think I know where you're going on that one. And I'm assuming you're probably talking about the productivity and taking people out for training. Yeah, as a trainer, somebody that does this, that sometimes can be the argument. And generally my negotiation is I'll go to the numbers. I will talk about the impact to the bottom line. This is why I had that in the slide. Because a lot of times we don't see that. We're only dealing with the issue at hand. But a lot of times management doesn't see the upper management. They only look at the P&L, the numbers, right? The projects that need to get done, the deadlines, the schedules. They're not looking at the impact of allowing bullies to stay in our business, or allowing that kind of behavior to continue, and the detrimental impact on the side. So sometimes we have to be able to say, okay, I hear you on this, But here's what's actually happening. The impact of allowing these people to continue is detrimental to the projects we're running. Maggie, you got some young ones don't really understand or are confused of what it means. That's right, they do. And so the fact is that we need to make sure that we're educating. You know, one of the things, I was just sharing this with an employer this morning, but I've been reading I follow a lot of trends, of course, because of what I do. This next generation that's coming because of the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world right now, the next generation that's leaving high school, that's just going into university right now, they're struggling and they're coming into our workplaces. And if our workplaces are not there to support them and help them, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So we need to make sure that it's a safe place, that we understand that we have to treat each other with respect and support each other, because it is that number that I showed you at the beginning, and I said it's 80%, but really it's 70. It is going to get past 80 if we're not careful. And so we want to make sure that we are really protecting our people. And that at the end of the day is the bottom line. Oh, thank you. Excellent information. Thank you. How do you handle someone who constantly calls wolf? Okay. Continually calls wolf doors. That's a good one too. And you know, that's the thing, is they might have that. Well, then that, you know what, at that point, that's the person. And now I ask the question is why they feel the need to. Here's the thing. When somebody thinks that they feel that they're being harassed or they've got complaints, then the question is why, and whether they do it a lot. The fact is it's real to them. And because it's real to them, the courts don't give a darn if it's once, twice, doesn't matter. The fact is it's affecting them, and we have to look at it. So I know a lot of times people roll their eyes like, oh, here comes Wendy again. Oh, we're going to complain. I'm not a complainer, but the fact is that if that was that kind of person, right, that's not the way to look at it, to say, okay, they're bringing value, what's going on. Here's the thing, they could be your teacher, right? Because a lot of times they're the ones that maybe see things that others don't see. And yes, maybe others are a lot more tolerant than others. But the thing is, man, if you can make it where they feel safe, then you know everyone definitely is feeling safer. So sometimes we have to look at it a little bit different, but you're definitely going to have to get to the root cause as to why they feel that way. And again, depends on the situation. I'd need a little more detail to be able to help you on that. But you can always find me at wendyhoff.com or reach out to me through any of the social media channels. I'm around. Or go through CSAM, Winnipeg Construction. I hang out there too once in a while. So I'd be more than happy to connect with you. Thank you all for being, I told you to be engaging. I really, really appreciate all your input, sharing your stuff. It means the world when we all work together. Isn't that what it's all about? All right, Miss Megan, we're down to 2 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I do want to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions, though it seems like the chat has been full of questions and some really good comments have been made as well. So thank you to everyone who has been participating today. I am going to spend a couple minutes before all of you jump off just to share my screen. So let me just bear with me here for 1 minute as I pull up my screen to share and highlight a few things that are coming up. And I want to make sure that you are aware of, but we will give Wendy a few minutes if there are some more questions.
I'll stay on. Yeah.
So,
and
please note we do have this recorded, so we will be making this available. Just give us a few days to get that organized. We will also be sending out Wendy's PowerPoint presentation along with the few files that she shared as well. So that will be coming out in an email to everyone, hopefully by the end of this week. So here on your screen, you'll see that we've had yesterday a webinar, today a webinar, and tomorrow we have one more webinar coming up on lone worker safety. So if you haven't already registered for tomorrow's session, you still have time through this QR code at the bottom. You can connect and register, and you'll receive the link to the Zoom webinar for tomorrow. Another item that I wanted to highlight is that we're heading up to the north. We'll be in Thompson and the Paw later on this month. So if you have workers out there, projects on the go, you can, and let's be aware that we're going to be up there, and we will have training to provide to those northern communities later this month, and check out our website for more information. On our website, we also have a lot of great resources, including we have our virtual toolbox talks. So if you're looking to do toolbox talks and not quite sure what topics you should be highlighting, or maybe you just want to show your group of people some of the toolbox talks that we have a number of them as virtual toolbox talks that you can literally go to our YouTube channel and press play and share that with your team. Another training event that we have coming up at the end of June as we kick off the summer is the West Van Training Blitz and Burritos event. That's in Brandon. So if you or you know others that are going to be in Brandon or have a workplace out there, please feel free to check us out on our website. You can follow this QR code that'll take you straight to that page on our website, and you can register yourself or people that you know for the training in Brandon on June 22nd. And we also have a great app. Most of you likely have it or know about it, but if you haven't already downloaded it, it is free and it has a great amount of resources right there, including the full act and regulation that when you have the app, you have access to that legislation at your fingertips. So feel free, please download it if you don't already have it on your smartphone device. Another great place to check out is our safety scene. So on our website, we have a calendar of events of all of the upcoming safety events that are happening around Manitoba. And please check it out if you're looking to see what's up and coming, and not just CSAM events, but events across the board with other industry safety associations and other groups in Manitoba. We also want to encourage you all to just connect with us. We have social media accounts on all of those below, so check us out there. And last but not least, I do want to give everyone the opportunity to give us your feedback. Give us your feedback on today's event, today's webinar. Please use that QR code that's on your screen right now, and follow that link. It'll give you an opportunity to provide feedback not only on webinars in general, but on Wendy's specific presentation that she gave this afternoon. And last but not least, I will just make sure that there aren't any additional questions that we want to answer. And there's some thank yous to Wendy. Yes, thank you, Wendy. And yes to Doris. You did miss the one from yesterday. We will be providing that information. Though you did miss it, don't worry, you'll get the information sent to you, Doris. So you'll have that to review. I think that pretty much sums up today. Wendy, do you have any last comments or feedback or anything like that? Awesome.
No,
well,
I just
thanks, everyone.
Everybody the best luck, right?
Excellent. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll hopefully see most of you back tomorrow afternoon. Okay, bye-bye.